This is Ken Pyle with VOD TV. We're at the Foundation in Excellence National Summit here, and we're with Governor Bob Wise. Governor, I really appreciate, former Governor Bob Wise of West Virginia. I appreciate your being here with us, and I was inspired by some of the things you said, the whole idea of changing education, bringing in technology. And why don't you start by telling us a little bit about what inspired you?
What inspired me is two things. One, being governor of West Virginia and recognizing that it was only through technology that we were going to be able to get quality education in all subject areas to a whole lot of students, particularly those in the most rural areas. But also, I calculated one night, and if you simply start totaling up, you realize we can't get there from here. And what I mean by that is when you start looking at stagnant budgets for states, which means you're not going to keep spending more, when you look at changing teacher demographics, large numbers of teachers retiring that are very skilled in their areas, and finally, you look at the growing disparity and difference between what it is that our students need to know to function in a modern society and what it is they're actually learning. So we simply can't provide the amount of students to our workforce that we need providing education the same way. So what changes this equation? Well, every other industry has used technology effectively to boost productivity. So how do we use technology to boost the educational productivity, the learning outcomes for the students?
Well, one of the things you said, and you're talking about, learning for the new era that we're in. You talked about the Agrarian Calendar.
Well, the Agrarian Calendar, we have an education system that was designed about 200 to 300 years ago. Much of it is based upon what I call the tyranny of time. 180 days, and most of it most of it's based on 180 days plus the entire summer off. And a lot of that comes from 200 years of tradition of the agrarian society. This is an information-based society, and incidentally, most farmers today are going to be in some sort of digital combine that's air-conditioned and not as bound as they were by time. That's the thing about technology. It's a 24/7, 365-day-a-year learning process. And so we need to get away from, I'm not arguing just more time for time's sake, I'm arguing for much better use of time. And so whether it's that the student is able to learn around the clock based on their needs, or whether it's a student who needs extra time is learning over the summer. There's a third element to the Agrarian Calendar, is that there's research that's pretty clear and conclusive from many sources that a large number of our students lose much of what they learned the previous 9 months over the 3 that they're out. And so for a whole host of reasons, it just makes sense to break this school year up and then also make a student's advancement based not on how long they sit in a seat, 180 days, but make it based upon how well they're doing. And so some students will move faster, some will move slower. But with technology, you're able to measure that on a literally minute-by-minute basis. You're able to adjust and develop a learning intervention or design an educational pathway for that student, and you're able to move them at the pace. So that's why the popular saying about technology and digital learning is any time, any place, any path, and any pace.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like the entertainment world is going that way too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we all are. And why is it that it's interesting? Why is it that education, which is the most critical industry that we can be involved in, the most critical enterprise and exercise, why is it that education is the one that takes least advantage of technology? I think that's changing because one is people want greater outcomes for their students, for our students, and the second part is that much more of the public understands technology because they're using it every day. If you are using a smartphone, if you just used a GPS, if you just Googled 3 times to get an answer to something, it's real-time, instant learning, and all of a sudden it says, wait a minute, I'm doing this, why isn't my child?
And you talk a little bit about bringing high-quality content, but it also with quality teachers.
High technology requires high teaching, and the two are integral. And what this does is it can change the role of the teacher so that teacher is no longer having to be the sole repository of knowledge. You don't have to depend on the teacher every day standing in front of the classroom of 22 to 25 students and simply lecturing. Now that teacher has the best resource to academic content anywhere.
So you're in Governor Bush's efforts. Tell us a little bit about what you're trying to do.
Well, what we're trying to do is to make sure that every state has implemented the policies that are necessary for digital learning to have maximum impact on student learning outcomes. And so about a year and a half ago, Governor Bush called me and said, I want to create a digital learning council. Let's make it bipartisan. He's the Republican, I'm the Democrat. We gathered about 100 of the nation's leaders in various aspects of digital learning, educational, philanthropic, nonprofit, for-profit, governmental, and came up with the 10 elements of a high-quality digital learning system. Today, what Governor Bush rolled out today was the roadmap to reform. So takes the 10 elements, has 72 different measurements by whether a state can look at and say whether or not they've got them in place or what they need to do to put them in place. And so we also announced today National Digital Learning Day, the first ever in the country, and that's so that across the country we can showcase on February the 1st, 2012, we'll showcase what it is that's making a difference for students across the country digitally, and then hopefully encourage a lot of others to take that up.
I already tweeted that. So, you talked about the classroom, and one of the question I have, a question I wonder if critics have is, are people concerned that this virtual learning and digital learning will eliminate the classroom and eliminate it as a kind of a community resource, the school as a community resource?
I hear that concern a lot. The classroom I think is going to change, and the classroom will vary. What I think will stay the same is for most students there will be a place called school that they come to if not every day, almost every day. There will be teachers in that school, but the important thing is that the role of the teacher will change, I think, be enhanced, because if you have blended learning, that is digital learning, online learning coming in and to a traditional brick and mortar school, what that means is a student's day could start with a virtual course, one that they're taking solely by themselves, perhaps in Mandarin Chinese. They walk down the hall and they take a blended course where there's a teacher standing up in front of students, but also assisted by digital content coming from anywhere in the world. And then the third class they may take is when they walk down the hall and it's a traditional teacher standing up in front of the class on a very tough and complex subject. But what's going to really change, I think, though, is for the first time teachers are going to be able to spend much more time with the individual student and personalize their education. So instead of a teacher who has 120 students in a day, having to, in a classroom of 25 students a day, having to stand up and one-size-fits-all lecture, then grade the homework, now the teacher may well send them home and they'll watch the lecture digitally or get that material, and they'll come back and do the work with the teacher, and he or she can work with them on each individual learning need that they have.
Well, it sounds like higher quality is definitely one of the goals then.
Higher quality is the goal. We wouldn't do this if it weren't going to result in higher quality. And so I just ask people to liken it to this. Right now, some people get concerned about, well, is my kid going to just be in front of a computer all day? No, it's like this. If you got a car, the car has been the same for about 100 years. It's 4 wheels and 4 doors. And so the school is going to look the same on the outside. But there's a whole different car today than there was even 30 or 40 years ago. It's a digital ignition system. There's air conditioning. Heck, there are cup holders. Right. So the car is a lot different, performs much better. And that's what we want happening inside that school. For most of our students, they're still going to school. And they're going to get the social experiences. They're going to get the sports, the intramurals, the other experiences. But what's happening inside in the teaching, what's under the hood, is going to be a lot different and a lot better for them.
A lot more horsepower and a lot more efficient.
I love that analogy. A lot more horsepower and a lot more performance.
Excellent. Well, Governor Wise, thank you very much.
Thanks for your interest.